What is good, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Paul and I make videos about Japanese society, life, and culture from the viewpoint of a long-term foreign resident. And today I'm probably not going to make many friends because I'm going to be talking about things that people really seem to love about Japan, tourists especially, that are overrated. Now, I will say that sakura cherry blossoms are not overrated, and if you can come here in the springtime, it's definitely worth it. Please enjoy this sakura corridor that I'm going to walk down today as I do this video. But I'm going to start right away. I'm going to get right into it and say the first thing that is decidedly overrated in Japan is convenience stores. Combini. Yeah, not going to make a lot of friends with that assertion because everyone loves Japanese combini. But bear with me, hear me out. This is why they're overrated. First of all, most people are comparing Japanese convenience stores to where they come from, the convenience stores in their home country. And let's be honest, that's kind of like driving a golf cart your entire life and then going to a foreign country and renting a Mitsubishi Mirage, the cheapest car on the market. Sure, it's better than a golf cart, but it's still the cheapest car on the market. And honestly, what I don't understand about it is you're sacrificing one of your few meals in Japan in order to have like a sandwich or a bread item from the convenience store. Like, Japan is a great place for a culinary experience. The food is so wonderful. Why are you wasting one of your meals by getting it at a convenience store? Because the bottom line is, yeah, it's nicer processed food than where you come from, but it's still processed food. It's going to have all those preservatives in there. It's going to have all of the extra food colorings and things to make it look better on the shelf. It's not a fresh made meal prepared just for you to order in a restaurant somewhere. Now, you might not care about that. You might think, well, you know, I eat processed food. It's not something that bothers me. I'm not worried about that. I think what people say, scary processed foods is overrated. And the convenience store is cheaper, right? Well, actually, not really. You see, when you go into a convenience store and you get like maybe a couple of rice balls, maybe a sandwich, one of the bentos they have, you get a drink, maybe some things out of the the hot items corner at the front cashier place. Typically, if you eat a normal amount of food, myself at least, I spend like 1,000 yen to 1,500 yen at the convenience store in order to get a nice balance of things and feel satiated. But Japan is still one of the cheapest places to eat out. They still famously have places for lunch that are one-coin restaurants. You could pay 500 yen to get a meal. Ramen restaurants are almost entirely less than 1,000 yen for a bowl of ramen. And lots of local and chain cafe places, you're going to get lunch or dinner for less than 2,000 yen. Take, for example, this place I had lunch at yesterday. Check this out. Everything freshly made, beautiful, delicious, and it cost 1,300 yen. Now, why would I trade that meal for like a sandwich at the convenience store? It's not even cheaper to buy at combini. Hence why it's overrated. So my advice to you is, you're in Japan for what? 7 days? 10 days? 2 weeks maybe? Why sacrifice one of your chances at some culinary perfection just to get some food at the convenience store? Now, I get it. Breakfast, it probably makes sense because there's not a lot of things open. And if you need breakfast and you go to the convenience store, okay, that makes sense. But other meals, it's not my recommendation. Now, I actually have a theory as to why Japanese convenience stores are so popular amongst foreign tourists. And I'm going to get to that real reason at the end of the video because it's kind of a realization I had when I was in Singapore a couple weeks ago. I'm like, oh, I think I know why Japanese convenience stores are actually so popular. So wait for the end to get into that. And speaking of wasting meals, I'm going to get into the second thing that I think is overrated about Japan, and that is theme restaurants. Whether it's the ninja restaurant or a maid cafe or the robot restaurant or whatever, the themed restaurants, you're paying for a show and inferior food. So again, if you're in Japan to experience the food culture, a theme restaurant is not part of the food culture. It really is just a one and done thing for tourists. And yes, I've done them. I've been to the ninja restaurant. I've been to a maid cafe, dragged there by two friends that came to visit and wanted to go. Never been back. So 19 years almost, and I've been once to each of those things. But you might be saying, well, Paul, if it's a one and done thing, let me do that one and done thing when I'm here as a tourist. Okay, fair enough. I'm not telling anyone not to do these things. If this is something that really interests you, then go ahead and do it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go to the ninja restaurant or that you shouldn't ever buy anything from a combini. I'm just saying they're overrated. So I'm trying to give some perspective. That's all. So yes, I've done these things once, and frankly, once is enough. And actually, in the case of the maid cafe, 0 would have been enough. But remember, you're only here for, 10 days, 2 weeks? You're going to have the chance for thousands of different once-in-a-lifetime experiences here. And, it doesn't have to be the ninja restaurant that is one of those experiences that you have. In a way, it really is a tourist trap. And speaking of tourist traps, we're going to get into the third one, which is Takeshita Street in Harajuku. Takeshita Street has done a very amazing job of making it look like a Tokyo must-see, must-do when you're in Tokyo, when in fact it really is just a tourist trap. Not just for foreign tourists, it's true. Japanese tourists under the age of 20 go there as well, because you want to get one of those famous crepe desserts or the giant cotton candy, or shop for some kind of novelty fashion goods, etc. I mean, I get it, but it's so crowded, and again, it's only tourists that go there. If you think it'll be fun to go there and you want to try one of the crepes and take a photo for Instagram with a giant cotton candy or whatever, knock yourself out. Maybe doing it once is all right, but it is a tourist trap, be warned. And if you're the type of person who wants to avoid things that are exclusively tourist traps, as in only tourists go there, then maybe avoiding that Takeshita Street in Harajuku is fine. Now, Harajuku, I do recommend going because, that's where the Urahara is, where all the boutique shopping is, all the sneaker shops for me, etc. And, of course, brand stores, and all of the lovely cafes and restaurants that go with that kind of atmosphere. So Harajuku is definitely worth checking out. It's just that Takeshita Street, in and of itself, is so crowded, and it's not for everyone, and it's not really a must as it's kind of billed itself to be. Now you might say, Paul, if the definition of a tourist trap is a place that only tourists go, then what about all those famous shrines and temples in Kyoto? Only tourists go there. And that's true in the sense that every student I've ever had who is from Kyoto City has told me that, yeah, I've never been to the Golden Pavilion. Nah, I've never really been to Kiyomizu-dera Temple. Like, if you live in Kyoto, you don't go to those Kyoto sites, generally speaking. It's like people who live around Mount Fuji generally don't climb Mount Fuji. But I would say the difference there is those temples and shrines in Kyoto are an integral part of Japanese history and the narrative, the story of Japan. Both the religious narrative, the historical narrative, and architectural, gardens, everything. It's something that goes a little bit deeper than a street with shops selling you crepes. All right, the fourth thing that is overrated about Japan, and this one, the first three, if you want to go do them and you want to experience them, fine. I'm just saying they're overrated. This one, I would genuinely say, don't bother, and that is capsule hotels. Every YouTuber who's been to Japan has done some kind of capsule hotel video, it seems. Like, I stayed in a Tokyo capsule hotel. I stayed in the most expensive capsule hotel in Japan, and here's what happened. It's a cubby hole that you sleep in, and you have almost no privacy. And if you're a light sleeper, you're going to get a terrible night's sleep. I'm not a light sleeper, and I got a terrible night's sleep the one time that I did it. It's just not a pleasant experience. And honestly speaking, it's not that much cheaper than staying in an actual room that's yours. I'm talking like maybe $10 to $20 more, and you get your own room with your privacy and your own toilet and shower. Maybe it's because I'm not in my 20s anymore, but it's like I'm willing to pay $15 extra to get my own toilet and shower and like a door between me and other people. And I don't think that's just me. So capsule hotels are a novelty, yes, but worth like losing a night's sleep over and spending almost as much money as a regular hotel? Not worth it. Not worth it at all. Now you might be saying, wait a second, where do you find these hotels that are only a tiny fraction more expensive than the capsule hotels? Quick pro tip for traveling to Japan. If you can handle the ambiguity of not having all of your accommodations taken care of before you come, once you arrive in Japan, if you book some of your hotels, after the first one you're staying in, if you book your hotels after you've arrived in Japan, prices tend to be cheaper, especially because it's going to be priced in local yen, etc. And you generally get better price deals within the country than when you're booking from outside. Of course, if you have a VPN, you can set your location to Japan, and your computer pretends like you're in Japan, and you can buy your tickets that way as well. This would be a lovely place to insert a VPN commercial or something for me, or a hotel booking site or something, but my channel's still too small to have that kind of sponsorship. So just use whatever VPN you have, or when you arrive in Japan, do some booking once you've gotten here. Okay, the final thing that is overrated about Japan, and I've talked about this one before, so I'm not going to get into a ton of detail, but climbing Mount Fuji, overrated. If you climb the mountain within the season, it's going to be crowded. It's just a snake of people going up. The only view you're going to have is the backpack of the person in front of you. And if you get to the top, you might get that lucky payoff of a sunrise, but the weather is very often not cooperative, and so you might not even get that. Climbing Mount Fuji is an ordeal. Even if you're in shape, it's still a tough thing to do, and it will take some recovery time. You're going to be basically sacrificing a day, if not two, for the process of climbing Fuji. Especially if you do the sunrise climb, you're definitely sacrificing 2 days to do that. So my recommendation instead is to climb around the mountain. There's beautiful mountains around, and here's the thing, when you're on Mount Fuji, you can't see Mount Fuji. And what's the most famous thing about Mount Fuji? It's the views of Mount Fuji. So if you climb the mountains around Mount Fuji, you're going to experience beautiful Mount Fuji views, and you maybe only take an afternoon to do that, or maybe one day at the most. You still get your time in nature, you get some beautiful photos of Mount Fuji, and overall, if you're in Japan a short time, that would be my recommendation rather than climbing the mountain itself. Okay, I've exited the Sakura corridor, and that is the end of my recommendations and what I think are overrated in Japan. I'm going to finish with my theory about why I think Japanese convenience stores actually are so popular with foreign tourists. You see, I was in Singapore a couple of weeks ago, and I was in a hawker center looking at all the various food stalls that they have there, trying to decide what I wanted to have to eat. And I decided I really wanted to try some Indonesian food because I have very little experience with Indonesian cuisine. And so I was looking at these different stalls, and I chose one that had Indonesian food that had a big line. So I assumed it must be pretty good if it was popular. I'm standing in line, I'm getting closer and closer to the front, and I'm starting to get really nervous. I don't recognize any of the words on the menu. I don't know if what I'm looking at is a protein or a salad or a side dish. I don't know what anything is. And there's no prices written either. So I don't even have that frame of reference. I'm watching people order in front of me, and I'm like, that looks good, but how do I order that? And I finally get to the front of the line and I talk with the woman, and basically I ended up getting this meal, which was one of the top 3 meals I had when I was in Singapore. It was so delicious. And it's because I persevered. I didn't chicken out and go to a different food stall where it would have been easier to order, or it was something I was more familiar with. And that, I think, is what's happening with the popularity of Japanese convenience stores. The food is at a certain decent level of quality, and you know exactly what it is, and you don't have to negotiate any language barriers. You don't even really have to talk to the staff when you buy something at the counter. Basically, the convenience store is a way to cheat. It's a way to get an easy meal without any anxiety of language, of interaction, of making a mistake, of getting something you don't want to eat, or getting something that, you have no idea what it is until it shows up at your table. So I get it. The convenience store is a safe choice. It is a place where you can go and you know exactly what you're going to get, and you know exactly what you're paying for. And so that's why it's very popular with foreign tourists. That's my theory anyways. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of my 5 things about Japan that I feel are overrated. Add your own ideas to the list below, but I want to thank you very much for watching this particular video. I will, of course, be doing things that are underrated in Japan, so you can replace some of the things on today's list with those if you're coming to Japan as a tourist. But once again, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time. Peace.